This letter was 3 months before Gettysburg, April 5th, 1863. It's near Falmouth, Virginia. And basically, he's talking about how he's seen in the papers that they're going to bring the draft back. And he's very excited about it. All the men are excited about it because understand that their regiments, a regiment should be 1,000 men. They're down to 300 men in their regiment. So if they bring the draft in, they will fill up all the regiments, which fill up all the divisions and the corps. And then, because they believe that if they have a powerful enough army, they can defeat the South. And he talks about how if any of the boys in the neighborhood are going to be drafted or their names are put in for the draft, he says, volunteer first. Because if you volunteer, the men will treat you better. But if you're a draftee, they probably not look so kindly on you. And he says, however, Father, you need not think that I want to encourage men to come out here. God forbid, for I have suffered myself enough to encourage others to come out here and undergo the same. But I know what will be the feeling of men when they come out here, how they are looked upon by the older members. This is a letter from Patrick. It's just a few weeks before Gettysburg. It's from Fairfax Station, Virginia. Dear Father, after a hard march of 3 days, we have arrived here. He talks about how occasionally they normally march 10 miles a day. In these 3 days, they marched 50 miles. Several died of fatigue and from heat. Everything was destroyed that we could not take with us. He's talking about leaving Fredericksburg and how they destroyed Fredericksburg before they left. Father, it is rather strange for us to leave such a strong position. For all the men in the rebel army could not drive us out of this place we had then. There is no troops here but our corps and Sedgwick's. The rebels did not follow us this time, but the papers say that the rebels is in Pennsylvania and Maryland. I hope there is a good many of them there, for I think they will not get away very easy this time. I suppose you were a little uneasy when you heard that the rebels was in Pennsylvania and thought they would enter New York State. I wish they would, for then this war would soon be over. But they are not such fools as you take them to be. For with us here and all the troops that are in Maryland and Pennsylvania, it would be sure destruction to them if they were in either Pennsylvania or New York. I suppose there is a brigade or a division of cavalry, but I think that is all. Give my respect to the family. Your affectionate son, Pat. On July 1st, the 2nd Corps was marching north towards Gettysburg. July 1st in the afternoon, the 82nd New York came into Taneytown. They were supposed to spend the day there, but when they got there, they could hear the cannon fire at Gettysburg already, so they were told to continue to march. This is on July 1st. They stopped that night 3 miles below Gettysburg. So in the morning of the 2nd, the 82nd New York quickly got onto the battlefield. You had the 2nd Corps and you had the 3rd Corps. Patrick was at the very end of the 2nd Corps, the left flank of the 3rd Corps. When General Sickles, I have no great love for General Sickles, so if I say his name wrong, it's probably because of that. He moved his corps forward for what he thought was a better advantage on the field. But what it did was it left his right flank open to the Confederate Army. So the 2nd Corps commander ordered the 82nd New York and 15th Massachusetts to move forward. So around 6 o'clock on the evening of July 2nd, the 82nd New York was right by the Cadore House, just on the Gettysburg side of it. They tore the fences down, they put the fences up, and they set up there, and that's where they were ready when the Confederate boys came across. You know, an interesting thing, Pat, in one of his letters home to his sister, he says, I named my gun after your friend Georgia. Now, I found that most soldiers that name their guns name them after their wives or their girlfriends or someone they were sweet on. So I didn't know he was sweet on Georgia, but I assume it was because Georgia was the name of his gun. I wonder if Pat knew that as he was laying behind that wood fence and firing his gun Georgia, he was firing at boys from Georgia, It was Wright's brigade of Georgians that came across, and they hit the 15th Massachusetts, the 82nd New York very, very hard. Now, we hear stories that a battery of Union artillery were firing grape shot over their heads. You don't fire grape shot over your own troops, but understand at this time of day, it was dusk, there wasn't a great deal of wind, all the firing and cannon, it must have been very hard to see. But we know that the 82nd New York took friendly fire as well as enemy fire. We don't know which fire wounded Patrick, but he was wounded in both legs. Fortunately, the Georgians were repulsed and sent back across the field, so they were able to collect Patrick and take him to a temporary field hospital where his right leg was amputated. They then moved him over to a more permanent Second Corps hospital, which is a Schwartz farm. Word got back to New York City incredibly quickly. I knew in just a few days that Patrick was wounded here. So I gathered up the little money I could and the little food I could, and I got on a train and came down to Baltimore, and then from Baltimore to Hanover. I was fortunate enough to get a buggy ride from Hanover into Gettysburg, and I found the Second Corps Field Hospital.